80% of data which enterprises hold today is what we would call dark, which means it can't be used in any decision making or any meaningful way for analysis or decision making by these enterprises. And this is not just about legacy data.
The consumer lens and the other is a commercial lens. From a consumer standpoint, India has the highest internet user base of around 800 million, largest number of UPI transactions, which is around 650 million a day, and there are merchants around 70 million who are actually on UPI. So on the consumer side, the story is very, very promising.
It's talked about across the world as India being the standard bearer of
Hello and welcome to Mint Techcetra, your trusted space where technology meets business and idea meet action. I'm your host Nelson John, and today we are exploring a critical shift that's reshaping the way enterprises operate across India. India's digital shift, why secure, intelligent information management is the next big step. As organizations go digital at an unprecedented pace, the question here isn't just about storage. It's about smart, secure, and scalable information management. To help us unpack this transformation, we are joined by two industry leaders with front row seats to this change. First, we have with us Mr. Arvind Subramanian, Executive Vice President and Managing Director at Iron Mountain India. Arvind oversees the company's operations across storage, digital solutions, and asset lifecycle management. He brings sharp commercial insight and a deep understanding of the Indian market. Also with us is Mr. Manish Yadav, Senior Principal Consultant at TechCircle. He works closely with enterprise leaders to decode complexity, shape strategic decisions, and drive insight-led information. Arvind, Manish, welcome to Mint Techcetra. It's a pleasure to have you both with us here today.
Delighted to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Right. All right. So let's jump right in. We at India, we believe we are at a digital cusp right now. A big digital exponential shift is happening, right? And with this shift, the requirement for, intelligent information management is at its peak. So from an outside in view lens, Manish, could you just help us, understand how is India's digital maturity evolving?
Right, that's a great question to start, Nielsen, and I want to put this into two buckets. One is the consumer lens and the other is a commercial lens. From a consumer standpoint, India has the highest internet user base of around 800 million, largest number of UPI transactions, which is around 650 million a day, and there are merchants around 70 million who are actually on UPI. So on the consumer side, the story is very, very promising. Consumers are adopting technologies, consumers are utilizing it to create their own business, create content, and make life out of it, right? But on the enterprise side of the business, it is different, right? They need to be more agile, more what you call aggressive in terms of supporting those consumer demands, right? So as per TechCircle research, there's a total spend of around $64.5 billion in 2025, we estimate. Which will be contributed by a lakh organizations, right? That trend basically is not just a trend, but if you look at a specific pie, which is say 100 to 500 crores of bucket, the mid-market bucket I'm essentially talking about contributes around 45% of the new business, which is approximately 7 billion, which is added to the 2025 TAM. Now, when you look at this trend, there are obviously drivers and there are obviously business outcomes which individual organizations are looking at, right? Firstly, on the business outcome, it has more to do with customer experience, building a better customer experience, providing better customized solutions to their consumers, to their end users for that fact. Or the second one is operational efficiency. So those two things are critical factors is what our TechCircle research highlights very, very clearly for 2025 perspective, right? And to enable these this outcome, there are technology spends which are happening. For instance, cloud spend is happening at around 20-25% of year-on-year growth. Then there is AI and ML spend also increasing with chat GPTs, agentic AI is coming into the picture. But again, the important piece here is the data platforms. Industries have realized the fact that till the time they have a proper data platform, where they can put all the data which is coming from various sources and have an intelligence built on it, they'll not be able to drive it successfully, as in the business successfully. So those are the things which we are believing is shaping the trend. Last but not the least is when we generate so much amount of data, obviously it requires storage. So government is pushing hard on the infra side, dedicated budget allocation this year, which we have heard, which is pushing the data center, what you call business into new heights. Currently, to service that 20% of data which is getting generated, we only have 2% of the overall data center capacity in India. So those are some of the things which I believe is making that shift towards digital economy. And I believe India is now going to be in that forefront of, say, race when we compare them to other growing countries.
Right, Manish. It's a great insight that you've put across. Arvind, Iron Mountain, has successfully woven together, the physical storage to digital transformation, right? But, when you talk to your customers, right, what are they talking about the challenges, especially they face with legacy records, in this fast-paced digital transformation?
Yeah. Let me firstly re-emphasize a very fundamental point that Manish made, which is that the next digital transformation or AI transformation journey has to be predicated first on a data transformation. And that's where the source of a lot of frustration today is with customers we speak to. Let me offer you some numbers. 80% of data which enterprises hold today is what we would call dark, which means it can't be used in any decision making or any meaningful way for analysis or decision making by these enterprises. And this is not just about legacy data. Around the same percentage, which is 80 to 90% of new data that's coming into these enterprises is also in an unstructured form. So this problem is only getting compounded year on year. And what this together means is less than 1% of data is being used for AI in enterprises. Now that's the problem statement we are trying to tackle, because clearly week on week we are seeing that the frontiers of possibility with technology, with AI are expanding. But enterprises are not able to keep pace. So in fact, this gulf is widening between the aspiration and the promise versus the reality.
That's right. So, staying on this topic, you told about, those aspirations and the gap that is expanding, I came across, an article like a while back, India apparently uses about 30 million tons of paper annually. 30 million tons. Think about, the volume of the paper usage. And most of this consumption is driven by industries like, health, education, government agencies, the print business and all of that. So, but Arvind, I have this question for you. Why is it so difficult to digitize? What's really difficult about it? Are there any kind of hurdles that you face? Are they like legal, scale, or any poor digitization strategy? The issues that we're facing here.
Yeah, look. Firstly, God bless paper. It's been our business for 70 years, and the stories of its death have been told many times, but it continues to be an important source of data. Now, we've all heard the marketing adage that 50% of marketing spend is wasted. We just don't know which 50%. The same applies to data, and whichever form it's in, whether it's physical in the form of paper records or digital data. And that's the starting point of where the challenge lies about what is the data I need to digitize? What is useful, what is not useful? So there's this whole concept of rot, which is redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. So it's important to first analyze your data to identify the rot, which could be anywhere from 30 to 60% of the data you hold should actually be purged. It's only the rest that it makes sense to digitize. And going through a structured exercise like that, I think, is a very, very valuable first step that enterprises can take.
Right. And, so the solution, for solving that, how important would you see a structured approach to it and, a seamless digital experience would matter to this?
Oh, it's absolutely pivotal. Now, let me offer another analogy. Think of 3 gears. There is processes, there is technology, and there's data as 3 gears that make the machine of the enterprise work. Now, today, those 3 gears are interlocked. And any mechanical engineer will tell you if 3 gears are interlocked, it's a gridlock. They can't move. So you need to disengage one of those gears so that all 3 gears can start moving. We have a new technology platform called InSight DXP, which we launched in the second half of last year, which allows you to do just this. it does two things essentially. One, it's able to digitize and create metadata at scale. And I'll talk in a minute about what that means. The second, it's a low-code platform that allows you to fill the gaps between your enterprise systems where they are not necessarily analytics ready or AI ready. When you bring these two capabilities together on a single platform, it is transformative in terms of what it can unlock as possibilities. So let me spend a minute talking about metadata at scale. Historically, what would happen? There was kind of three phases of evolution of digitization of data. First, paper records would just get scanned. So you would have an image, which is not particularly useful other than serving as a visual repository of something that is physical. But there's no information that it can give you. We then went into digitization, which you're able to extract a few fields, either using some kind of OCR technology or manually enter a few fields as you digitize documents. And that gives you some starting point to work with the data that resides in those documents. Now we have moved to a stage where we can interrogate documents in natural language queries and really start working with those documents as though they were a conversational partner. This has been made possible with all the Gen AI technologies that have come in, and that's what is embedded in DXP. So when DXP looks at a document, it's able to extract metadata of all kinds. You don't need to know what problems you want to solve 5 years down the line, which was the problem we had historically. You needed to know that, for example, let's take a financial services company, a home loan company. They know that there are certain regional patterns in home loan sales at certain times of the year. So they want to capture PIN code data along with the home loan data. So yes, you've set up your relational database where PIN code data is correlated with the customer ID, value of the loan, etc. And that allows them to launch these campaigns. But tomorrow, let's say there is a different need that the business has. They want to be able to analyze how much of my home loans are sold when a new residential project is launched versus during a sustenance phase. How much is sold to young customers versus senior customers. That information was not captured. So you need to go back to the document and start pulling out that information. Today, with the technology that exists, all of that can be done without having to go back into the source data and have to recreate or repopulate your databases.
Right. So, without naming any customer, would you like to share a success story where this is, being incorporated really well?
Well, there are lots of use cases that we are now starting to use both in India as well as globally. Let me focus our conversation on India. Yeah. So home loans, again, staying with the same theme. There's a lot of documentation needed, both pre-dispersal as well as post-dispersal. And very often, this is a very manual-intensive process. Competitive advantage of mortgage lenders is about how quickly they can sanction a loan. So yes, they take digital copies, usually have tablet-based appraisals, and they can say, yes, I'm willing to give a loan to Nelson of such and such a value based on the information he shared. But then eventually that actual information has to come in some authenticated form. So your salary slip has to come, your bank statements have to come, your address proof has to come, any other liabilities you have has to come. Now, how do you correlate that post-appraisal decision with the information that you had pre-appraisal? Right. And I'm not even suggesting that there is fraud or mismatch, but there is just a different richness to the information that you get. So it could help you actually upsell, cross-sell, reappraise the customer. Then take it one step forward. The loan is disbursed. Through the life of the loan, your situation changes. You maybe are eligible for a larger loan, a top-up loan, etc. Again, how do I use my regular interactions with you, information that you provide, the payment patterns, how promptly you pay your EMIs, etc., to actually be able to sense that there is an opportunity here to upsell to Nelson, either a top-up home loan or some other product that I have, maybe a vehicle loan, maybe a personal loan, etc. All of this is based on making sense of disparate data that comes to you, sometimes in physical form, sometimes in other interactions. It could be a call center interaction. So how do you create this connectedness of data? I think is starting to be a very, very important use case we're addressing.
It's beautiful. I mean, the way you mentioned it looks like, everybody's going to get their loans quicker, I guess, this time now. Sticking on with, Arvind, Iron Mountain, globally across, it's known for secure storage. But you did mention about InSight DXP, right? Your platform where, you're clearly stepping into a transformational territory with InSight DXP. So what makes this a true digital play?
So as I mentioned, InSight DXP has two important legs to it. One is digitizing and creating metadata at scale. And the second is about how it sits between various enterprise systems and is able to populate the systems and populate the systems not just with data, but with analysis and inferences. Both of these are equally important because legacy systems sometimes have the capability to do this, sometimes don't. And it's supplying them with structured data is only one step of the journey. Very often you also have to supply them with intelligence and analytics. And that's what DXP is able to do. So let me talk about a few situations where DXP solves for current pain points in the industry. Let me take a different example in the manufacturing industry. Accounts payable. Now, accounts payable is a classical problem that every large manufacturing company has with distributed vendors. You issue a purchase order, you receive goods, you issue a goods receipt note, and eventually the vendor will supply you an invoice. You need to do a three-way matching between these. You need to ensure that the rates are as per the contracted rates, the quantities are verified in terms of both the quantity as well as quality. And then against the purchase order that the budget had been allocated, that budget is then used to pay the vendor. All of this remains a very document-intensive process. And I'm using the word document to cover both physical as well as digital documents. Today, our audience will immediately say, oh, but I receive all my invoices digitally. Yes, you do. But every vendor has his own format for an invoice. Sometimes the GST number is on the top right, sometimes it's at the bottom. So how do you start extracting some of that in an automated manner without an agent having to type this data in and manually verify it? I think that's a classical use case that we think is ripe for disruption with the kind of technology we have. Another would be HR records. Again, every employee through their life cycle, their joining documents, all their documents through the employment period as well as their leaving documents. How do you maintain that in a way that is compliant with privacy law, which is becoming increasingly important, but also allows you, particularly in manpower intensive industries, to track if this is a rebound candidate who worked with me in the past and has come back. I don't need to go back and ask him for the same information again. So your entire employee experience can be transformed.
Right. Even in the banking sector, financial institutions, they use intelligent records, to stay agile and compliant.
Yes.
Right. So you have any use cases on that basis?
Yes. So information governance is becoming a very, very important driver of how enterprises manage their data. As I told you, there's rot mitigation, but then it also moves ahead to say, as per the local regulation, what is the data I'm supposed to retain in what form for how long? So today, for example, the DPDP Act, which is imminent and the rules are starting to get circulated and discussed, will require financial institutions and others to maintain certain data and to purge certain data. They cannot hold certain data which is private to a customer. So how do you make sure that that data is redacted from the documents you've saved? And sometimes you need event-based consent. Sometimes you can have blanket consents for a certain period of time. How do you manage consents? All of that can be done using these technologies.
And when we look at the healthcare space and the public sector, how is digitization playing out for them? Like, do we see any hurdles?
Manish talked about the revolution that we are seeing with UPI, and it's talked about across the world as India being the standard bearer of digital payments, frictionless, low cost, instantaneous digital payments. The same is actually happening in the what I would call the broader citizen services space. Look at what's happening with the courts and digitization of courts across the country. The Supreme Court of India has been pushing all the high courts to get digitized. There's an allocation of something like 7,000 crores of budget to be spent before 2028 to digitize all these courts. The high courts in turn are therefore getting their district courts to get digitized. Now, this started with digitizing legacy records, so old case files, disposed cases. It then went into active cases. And now we are starting to see RFPs and tenders for new case filings to happen digitally. And these cases will then be presented to the judges digitally along with all the supporting papers, etc. And the next step I see from this is how do you then use AI to extract precedent cases from your database and present it to the judge along with the new case that has been filed. So that's a great example. There's similar work happening on land records digitization across the country. There is work happening on archives, which is a amazing kind of piece of work led by the National Archives of India, but again happening also at the state level, where historical documents 400, 500 years old are not just getting imaged, but important information from that is getting extracted with local language OCR.
Right. Manish, do you want to weigh in on any of these trends that you see propping up right now?
So, Nelson, I completely agree with Arvind, the points which you have mentioned, starting from, say, sectors like BFSI to manufacturing to healthcare and to public as well. We see the same notion from an outside in view standpoint, right? As an analyst, uh, banks have successfully done it. 90% of the banks have actually digitized their front end to make the onboarding seamless for customers, loan processing, which Arvind obviously talked about in detail. So those are some of the things which bank have really done. Insurances are also figuring that same aspect out, like banks have done, but again they are not far away. They have also successfully done a good amount of digitization. When we look at healthcare, healthcare is another very interesting what you call vertical, right? So since the time of digital record making, right, has come into the picture, that particular aspect has grown by 25% in last 5 years. So, but again, these are large hospitals or large what you call healthcare sector companies. But if you look at those mid market or still the LEs, those are still using that hybrid nature of paper plus digital. So those are some of the different trends which we are seeing from a market or a vertical which is growing. It is not as matured as what you call BFSI. And obviously, it was very interesting to hear the manufacturing as a sector which you talked about, because manufacturing sector has been the laggards in terms of say
Digital
adopting
adoption.
any kind of technology, right? So it was pretty interesting to know that manufacturing organizations are spending there to minimize the workloads there, right? And then again the government piece, I don't want to reiterate, but land records and the legal engagements which government is doing, those are absolutely there. But one critical aspect is government also has a mandate that one of their departments should be 100% digitized.
Yeah, paperless
That's
offices.
paperless offices. That's one mandate within say multiple offices. One department has to be completely digitized. So we are seeing that notion of digitization happening. Not to just do say documentation digitization, but again the journey of how you can make your customers' life easy, right, is what we are seeing as a trend. Just to add to what Arvind has
And
mentioned.
Manish spoke about hospital records and patient records in healthcare getting digitized. Combine that with what's happening on the health insurance space. And claims getting digitized, claim adjudication getting digitized. Again, what is the source of competitive advantage of a health insurer? It's about how fast he settles a claim, right? And how accurately and how fast he settles a claim. All of that is getting digitized and going into straight through processing.
Absolutely.
That's right. So, Arvind, what's next for InSight DXP in India? I mean, are we looking at a regional rollout, deeper vertical integration, or more AI-powered tools integration into it?
Absolutely. So as I said, Inside DXP was launched globally last year. India was one of the first countries that it was launched in, and we already have some early customer wins on that. The next version and the next feature set will be launched later this year, which will have a lot more of the embedded AI tools. And we see this moving in two directions in India. One is what we would call the horizontal opportunities. I talked about accounts payable, I talked about HR records, and that applies across sectors. But the second is vertical specific opportunities. So in banking, in insurance, in healthcare, how do we create custom solutions for problems that these industries are facing? So I think there's tremendous opportunity. I mean, another that we've come across in lots of conversations is fraud detection in documents. And this applies to many different sectors. How do you look at a document and sense that this has been tampered with? If we can crack that problem, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity there.
So you're saying you have that technology which does that?
We're working on that.
Working on that. And you also mentioned about accounts with Inside DXP. Like, so is the government also a part of it?
So far, the government has not been a part of it because a lot of the government work tends to require open source technology. So we do digitization work for the government, but not inside DXP so far. But I do see going forward that this will become an important part of how citizen services are offered digitally.
I just wanted to add a couple of points on not on the DXP, but obviously the experience platform, right? So, two things which we are observing from our side is one, personalization.
Yes.
Real-time personalization, to be very specific. Now, organizations have multi-channels, multi-touch points, right? But they are not able to effectively utilize that data so that they can have a real faster personalized kind of an offering. The point which you talked about, banking offerings, say credit cards and loans and all those things, right? And the second piece is what I just mentioned, the channel. Now it is very important because, for an example, Apple, we buy Apple phones from their stores, from retailers like Chroma, we buy it from online, we buy it from marketplaces as well. Now multiple touch points generating different type of data.
Yep.
Now which data, how you should gather and churn in terms of information that, okay, my next buying with this customer is going to happen after 1 year. So those are some of the things which experience platforms are trying to offer when they integrate the data points which are remaining in silos or data which is fragmented. So that's one thing which I wanted to just add to what Arvind talked about on the DXP.
And maybe let me take a minute to amplify that in a B2B context. The example Manish gave was B2C. Every B2B service provider has a set of customers who will reach out via email, via letters, via call center contacts, via service requests, etc. How do you start stitching all of this together to A, have a single view of that customer, but B, then also be able to respond to the customer where they are as opposed to where you are?
Right. So you're saying all of this is integrated into Inside DXP?
Inside DXP is a platform that allows you to integrate various touch points and various sources of data in unstructured form, structure it and
In a single pane view, like
in a single pane.
Beautiful. So Manish, I wanted to ask you, from your conversations and your consultation work, what's the general sentiment in the industry when it comes to platforms like DXP?
Right. So I mentioned a couple of points on that side. It is trying to close the gap while leveraging that digital piece into it. Right. There are a lot of gaps. Arvind also pointed out data coming from different sources. How do you combine them, create a real insights to offer to the customer, whether it is an end user or a B2B customer, and then what you call how real that is, right? Because in today's world, if you are not able to provide real-time analysis, then you are losing a customer. They know that we need people to what you call start using it. There will be data points coming across multiple users because everybody has a different mindset of inputting a data. Rather than they training their own platform, they are asking us to train their platform. So that's also one kind of a what you call data consolidation and training mechanism. So again, not a direct relevancy, but again, just an example to put it forward.
So Arvind, my final question to you would be like, if you have a customer who's sitting on huge stacks of paper and all of that, still in the legacy way of working, what would be your one advice to them, where they can, one advice where they can step in the right direction towards the digital transformation?
Yeah. So firstly, they should be storing the paper with us. That would be advice number one. But importantly, as they move to digital transformation, I would say the starting point is to unlock, to shed light on that dark data. I spoke about 80% of data being dark. So how do you shed light on it? It is by using tools like information governance to firstly understand what is useful data, what is not useful data, what am I required to have, what am I not required to have, and then start working to digitize part. And all of it cannot be digitized at once. So what you need to do is to be able to firstly extract metadata so that you know what data you have. Then selectively start digitizing data as you need it for certain decisions, certain business processes, certain systems that you're upgrading, etc.
And what would Iron Mountain in India look like probably in 2030?
So I think we'll continue to be leaders in information management, but that mix will change between physical records and digital information management. And I would say it would be at least a half and half split between what we do digitally versus what we do physically.
With that, we come to the end of this episode at Mint Techcetra. Arvind, Manish, it was wonderful conversing with you, great insights, and it looks like the future is promising for India's digital aspirations.
Thank you. Wonderful speaking to you, Nelson. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. After this conversation, it's clear that intelligent information management is not just about technology. It's about strategic implementation and understanding its transformative power in India's digital shift. The world of technology and business is constantly evolving. And as we hear today, the right approach to information governance can make all the difference. Don't forget to subscribe to Mint Techcetra on YouTube and all audio streaming platforms for more deep dives. Until next time, stay curious, stay ahead. This is your host, Nelson John, signing off.